Everybody brought their assignment on time. But I'm saying, we shouldn't wait for a negotiating strategy to determine what we need to do. You have discipline in life is setting up strong personal standards. And what are those personal standards? To do what we promise to do, to eat for each other when we say we do, but to do what we promise to do before God. Now tomorrow, some of you will be participating here in the confirmation service. And part of the responsibility of people who are studying the sacrament of confirmation, the rite of confirmation, is promising before God that I will live as a Christian. And in many churches, we all say either the Apostles' Creed or the Nicene Creed. Some churches say the Athanasian Creed, but it is a creed. And it begins with the words, I believe in. Not sure? I believe in God, the Father the Almighty. Then there are ways of moving on from that. But we're all believing that there's one triune God who is sovereign of all. So what do we have to do to align our lives with that? And the challenge of life is we feel as human beings sometimes that we can do our own thing, right? How many of us like to do our own thing once in a while? Right? Having some degree of control is good, isn't it? Why does that freedom make you feel good? Tell me. Gives you the opportunity to do it more, right? And sometimes that's a good point. But the opportunity to do it more has good points and bad points, right? Because you can do anything you want, but if it's wholesome, it may end up well. If it's not wholesome, it may not. How many of you are drivers? Okay. How many of you have ever driven over a bridge? All right. Now, let's say you were driving, what's your average speed over a bridge? What is it? I don't know. 45. Okay, let's say 45, right? Let's take that same bridge and take off the guardrails. How fast would you be driving? 40. I'd be walking over that bridge. Why? Because the guardrails give us a sense of confidence and protection. Our faith, the Ten Commandments, all the things that we have are guardrails that protect us as human beings. And if we follow them, we will be safe. If we move out, we will be lost. Some years ago, I had to speak in Ecuador, so we had break. So I went to a place. It was a very high mountain in Ecuador. It's 14,000 feet. You don't have any mountains here in Texas. New York, we don't have mountains, we have hills. But in the West Coast, you have mountains. But in Ecuador, there's one 14,000. And you know what I did? The mountain. I didn't go all the way to the mountain. See, there was a tram that brought me up to 1,000 feet below, 1,500 feet below, went up the tram. And then I started walking the remaining to get to the top. It was very hard because the air was thin. And I was struggling up the mountain. I wasn't in good shape. But everywhere on the mountain there were signs. Do not cross over this pathway because you will get lost. And I thought, how on earth can anybody get lost on a mountain? Because if you're lost, you go either up or down, right? But mountains are never like that. They are huge. And if you go off the track provided, you will spend days circling and circling until the weather changes and you get lost. And eventually, you might perish. That's what happened to many people who climb Mount Everest. The thing is, we don't know necessarily what can harm us. But our faith, our community, our focus on the presence of God always reminds us of this safe place called church, this community called Christian, and that if we remain faithful, God will protect and watch over us. I'll give you one other illustration. Now, you think all bishops have nothing else to do but do bishop stuff, right? Whatever that means. But, we do have other lives, we do things too. One of the things I always wanted to do was a pilot, being a pilot. So I'm a pilot. I've flown for now 25 years, I've my license 25 years. So 25 years ago, I was trained. And in order to get trained, you have to do a series of tests, right? So, we had to do all these kinds of maneuvers, and the final is something called a check ride. And the person I had for my check ride was a United Airlines captain. And, they don't say anything when you do the maneuvers. It says, I want you to land on the third strip on the runway. If you do, you pass. If you're not into aviation, everything has to be gauged and timed. Long story short, I landed on the third strip because I was trained well by my instructor. But he said, if you don't land on the third strip, you may not pass, but if you do, you will pass. Life is a little bit like that. Because people have all kinds of expectations of you. We cannot say it's not fair, it's too hard. Right? Why doesn't somebody else do it? If we want to do it, we want to accomplish our goals, we have to discipline our heart and mind and body to accomplish that, and we must do it to the best of our ability, and it will be done if we are willing. But that requires faith. God has faith in each one of you, God has faith in each one of us. What you need to require in this journey through life is to have faith in yourself to accomplish that which is good and perfect in the sight of God. One more flying illustration. After I got my license, just before that, one more. We have to do free touch and goes in various airports. So I had to fly from New York to Massachusetts, to Connecticut, and then back to New York. So what we're required to do is to check the weather and everything. And since at that time I was not instrument graded, I could only fly within no clouds. So I got up, checked everything perfectly, did all of my calculations perfectly, got up into the air by myself, and I was feeling great as I did this. So I started going over Long Island Sound, things were perfect, I knew exactly where I was going. But then the wind started moving me, I was getting off course. And I was getting nervous, I didn't anticipate this wind. And then I got off course more. Then I said, I wonder how bad could this be? It's a little windy. Then I went a little further and started to see puffy white clouds come by. I said, this wasn't in the weather forecast. And I flew a little further. More puffy clouds turned into big clouds. You go into those big clouds, you can't see anything. So what did I have to do? I turned 180 degrees and went back to my starting point and started again. That's what I was trying to do. If you're in a position where you can control things, go back where you started from and begin anew. But that is a lesson in life. Because no matter how much we prepare and organize things in life, it will not turn out the way that we expect. And so instead of blaming others, blaming ourselves, blaming the weather, blaming anybody, go back to your point of reference and begin anew. And our point of reference is our faith. Our point of reference is the church. Our point of reference is the community that uplifts us, so one never gets lost. Now, the other part of our conversation for today has to do with a theme of discernment, spiritual growth, spiritual renewal. One of the questions that was posited for our reflection was, what are some practical steps that we can take to experience spiritual renewal? Who here can read? Good. All right. You look like you can read. All right. I want you to read. Can you read quickly? Because I only have a few minutes. All right. Read. This is old formal English. Right. Read loud. Here.
Now there are diversities of gifts, but the same Spirit. There are differences of administration, but the same Lord. There are diversities of operations, but it is the same God which worketh in all. But the manifestation of the Spirit is given to every man to profit withal. For to one is given by the Spirit the word of wisdom, to another the word of knowledge by the same Spirit, to another faith by the same Spirit, to another gifts of healing by the same Spirit, to another the working of miracles, to another prophecy, to another discerning of spirits, to another diverse kinds of tongues, to another the interpretation of tongues. But all these worketh in that one and the self-same Spirit, dividing to every man severally he will. For as the body is one and hath many members, and all the members of that one body, being many are one body, so is Christ, so also is Christ. For by one Spirit are we all baptized in one body, whether we be Jews or Gentiles, whether we be bond or free, and have all made to drink is one Spirit. For the body is not one member, but many.
What does that say? Simplify that in one sentence. Or two sentences. Everybody was hearing the same thing, right? What does that say? In a simple way. Help me. That they only be one. There are many variety of gifts, but one same Spirit. We all worship the one triune God. We're all part of the one great human family full of Christian. But all of us are different with various different, unique and special gifts. And if we align our gifts with God and we align our gifts for that purpose, then something beautiful and wonderful can happen. You know, there's an old story about a man who drew water. Now, before the days of plumbing, as we know it, how did people draw water? Well, how do they carry water? Buckets. And how were those buckets fastened? Could be a rope or sticks. Large sticks with multiple buckets on them, right? Well, this man was carrying a bucket with two buckets with a stick in between, right? Carrying a load. And the interesting, it's a fable, so the buckets were talking to each other. One bucket was well-rounded, could hold water. You know, one other bucket was tattered, rusty, and had holes. And the other bucket, talking to the other bucket, says, you know, you should be ashamed of yourself. You can't even do the job for which you were created. And that bucket talked to himself, says, you know, I do feel ashamed. He told his master who was carrying, you know, master, I feel terrible. Because here you are struggling in the heat of the day, getting water from this well and bringing it home. I can't even do my fair share. And the master said, oh, don't worry about that. What do you see in the path of the walk? He said, well, I see flowers. He said, yes, they're flowers. You know what side the flowers are on? The flowers are on the right side, the same path that I'm following. He said, well, I knew of your weakness, that you had holes and you were imperfect. So whenever I carried the bucket, I made sure I carried you on the right side and had planted flowers all along. And have you noticed we never came home to the house empty of flowers? It was because of you. Somehow God is able to use our weakness, our imperfections, our doubts, our misgivings, our fears, in a wonderful purpose. None of the disciples of Jesus were perfect human beings. They all had weaknesses. Some of them fought with each other. Many of them were imperfect. But God was able to use them because they remained faithful. So we're called to perseverance. And never ever give up on yourselves or in your capacity to make a difference, especially when sometimes you feel ready to give up. Because you are fearfully and wonderfully made in the sight of Almighty God. I know that we have a few minutes for conversation. Where is Rebecca? Am I running out of time? Oh, I got 5 more minutes. All right. Well, can I give you one more illustration that I learned? See, most of the illustrations I learned have come through experience that I've really understood from the leader. I was on another flight that I took, and this is air traffic control talking to me, okay? November 2269, Quebec. 737 heavy, 5,000. What is that saying? It says, you, little plane, that's me, November 2269, Quebec. There is a big 737 jetliner coming your way at 5,000 feet, heading 060, which is the runway. You are legally bound. You can do anything you want. But I'm just letting you know. If you stay where you are, you're going to have a very bad day. Just because we can doesn't mean we should. That appears twice in Corinthians. How many times you say, I have the right to do whatever I want. I can do this. Who's going to tell me no? Right? Have you ever thought that? But our actions have implications broader than ourselves. If you choose to go on one path or make bad decisions, who is impacted by your decisions? Who is? Who's impacted by decisions? Everyone. That's a big word, everyone. I can't think that much. So help me out. Who's this everyone we're talking about? People around you. Who's the people around you? Family? Friends? Relatives? Strangers? Co-workers? Fellow students? People we don't know about? People who have to clean up after your mess, right? So do the right thing. Don't let the pressures of life transform your lives in an ignoble way. Let it be noble by the renewing of your minds to the will of God, that which is will and good and perfect. That's what the theme of this gathering is. To talk about how we are special in the sight of God, that God has a purpose for each one of us. We're not here by accident. We're really not. There's a reason why you are here. And I can't tell you the reason. But somehow, through your life, somehow by what you say, somehow by the way you live, somehow the way you conduct yourself, someone else's life is going to see you. And by seeing you and how you deal with life in happy moments and in sad ones, in difficult moments and in very uncertain ones, they will come to know the love of God. Because you are the best evangelist for the gospel. Through your life and through your personal witness, others come to see and glorify God. And so step up, be firm, be joyful. Don't sit like sourpusses. Communicate a sense of joy and thanksgiving in everything that you do. Mindful that not all of life is going to be perfect or easy, but with God's grace, anything is possible. Right? All right. So, how do we deal with uncertain moments when you don't know what's coming next? Yeah. How do we deal with uncertain moments when we do and don't know when we're going to be next? I'm going to ask Matthew. He has no clue what I'm going to say. What do you do when you don't know what's going with next? Ask for help. Right? That's exactly what George is going to say, right? Ask for help. So, what do we ask for help for? For guidance. And that's why asking for that help is critical to who we are as Christians. And we frame it in a different way. Prayer. Prayer is our line for communicating with God. Prayer is the vehicle through which God's light and presence is taken unto us. So one of the personal disciplines that we need to develop and can develop is a discipline of personal prayer. Not just corporate prayer when we gather, but do so when you wake up in the day. Right? Because we can say, "Oh Lord, it's Monday morning." Or we can say, "Oh Lord, it's Monday morning." Different tone, right? But with God's help, anything is possible. So, in a very simple way, what I'm asking you to pray every day. Really, quietly, silently, using your own words, develop that personal discipline of prayer. And there's so many resources out there that offer you spiritual reflections. Use them, because somehow they will inspire you. Because somehow you will be the source of inspiration for someone else who's trying to experience the love and mercy of God as you've come to know it. You are the beacon of God's life. You are the city on the hill. You are the salt and light that the Gospel according to Matthew speaks about. You have a profound ability to make a change in this world and to be agents of God's amazing grace. Amen.
Thank you, Bishop, for that wonderful message. That was really heart-touching. We appreciate that. So now we're going to go into our small group session. You guys, there's a number on the corner of your tag, and based off that